Hello everyone, my name is Scott Barnes and I'm a personal injury attorney in Pensacola, Florida. I focus on all types of personal injury, whether it be motor vehicle accident cases, medical malpractice cases, and premises liability cases. And one type of case I want to talk about today, which is a premises liability case, is the case involving a slip and fall at a business. And that's a case where a person is walking into a business and they slip on some sort of liquid and they fall and they have an injury as a result. It's a relatively common occurrence, at least in the state of Florida. Now, one thing I want to talk about is that there's this big misconception that a lot of people have. They think just because they fell and injured themselves at a business, that business is automatically liable for their injuries and for their medical bills. And that is a misconception because on Florida law, it is just the opposite. You as the plaintiff have to affirmatively prove that the business knew of the substance, whatever the liquid was, that they actually knew that the substance was there and on the ground and that they should have cleaned it up or that they should have warned you better. Or if you can't prove that the business actually knew about the substance, you have to prove that the substance was there for such a long period of time that they should have known about it and that they should have cleaned it up and that they should have warned you about it, even though they actually technically didn't know about it. Now, there are a couple practical problems with cases like this in Florida that we frequently see. And I'm going to give you some tips in a moment. If you're in a slip and fall accident, you're wondering, well, what do I need to do? But before I get there, I kind of want to define for you what the problems are. The first problem is that rarely are you ever going to have a situation where a business is going to admit that they knew that the spill was there ahead of time and they just didn't do anything about it. Almost always the businesses will claim that they had no idea that the spill was there and they have no idea how it got there, and then they leave it to you to prove how it got there and how long it had been there. And I want that to sink in for just a minute. They leave it to you, the person who had no idea the spill was there to begin with, to somehow prove how long that spill had in fact been there. That can be a very, very difficult thing to prove. And the way that we typically prove it in Florida is if there's video surveillance of the premises, of the business, that can be helpful, but we frequently have to prove it by talking to other witnesses who were at the store and around the area. And then the third way that we frequently have to prove it is by looking at the character of the substance that you slipped on. And that's where you as the plaintiff or you as the person who's been injured can sometimes be helpful if you can describe for us, well, you know, this puddle looked like it was very, very big and it looked like perhaps other people had walked through it, which would be indicative of the fact that it had been there for a while if other people had walked through it. Or the classic case you see is the ice cream, but it had been there so long that it had actually melted. That gives us some idea that it had been there for a while. These cases can be very, very difficult to prove, and they're very, very fact specific. So if you've been in a slip and fall accident, or if you're with someone who's been in a slip and fall accident, it's very critical that you do a few things if you can. And if you're the person who's injured, I understand that this can be very, very difficult for you because you're injured and you probably need to seek medical care. But you need to ask your loved one or your friend or whoever it is who's with you to help you out in gathering as much information as possible. Number one, get the names and the contact information, the phone numbers of any witness you can find to the fall or to what happened around the fall, either before the fall or after the fall. Number two, inspect the area that made you fall so you can really get a good idea of what it is and if there are any characteristics that I just described that may give us some idea how long it had been there. And then the third thing you probably need to do is get a copy of the incident report that the business may have you fill out. Sometimes they won't have you fill one out, but frequently the business will give you a document to fill out about the incident and then they'll immediately take it back. You need to ask for a copy of that immediately. Those are three practical tips that I can give you that if immediately you're in an accident of this sort, a slip and fall, things you can do to potentially help prove your case down the road. Thank you.